Hi there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on our Primaris Space Marine Apothecary and loving the model. Did a review, I'll put the link down in the description or you'll see it in the end card there. But really like this model. It actually turned out super well. I like the posing, I like the kind of presence that we have on there. I like that it's asymmetrical on the base. So lots of big pluses to this model here. Now, I'm going to be painting it up a little bit differently. I'm going to be doing it in not my traditional type of scheme. This is actually for a friend. We're doing Wargasm is coming up pretty quickly here, and I'm just painting this up for him. So you're going to see a couple changes. One, I'm going to be using the Grelin Earth instead of my normal sand and grit down at the bottom, so it matches the rest of his army. And instead of using the Altdorf Guard Blue for the Ultramarine shoulder pad, I'm going to be using the Thousand Suns Blue. Now, everything else is going to be the exact same except for those two changes. So if there's ever a doubt, just know that use Altdorf Guard Blue if you want to stick with my traditional scheme, or if you want to see my friend Greg, if you want to see his scheme, we'll use the Thousand Suns Blue as the blue for the Ultramarines. So I'm going to get this guy all primed up with our CORAX white, and we'll be back to start painting him up. Okay, he's all done up in CORAX white, and now I'm going to take some white scar and I'm going to do a thin coating all over the white armor bits, simply because of the finish on the CORAX white. It's a little bit smooth, and we want to use this as literally a base coat. So I'm just going to take some very watered down CORAX white here, and I'm just going to go over all of the armor, and you'll see it's got a bit of a different color, but I don't care so much about the color as the finish. So this is quite a bit thinned down. So I'm just going to go over all the water, go over all of the armor, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, so with that really thin coat of the white on our model here, our apothecary is going to get his tabard done up in red. Now, the reason I'm doing the red first is I can go after these little bits of leather strapping, I guess, of these strings holding on the different vials of medications, things like that. But for now, I'm going to go with the MEPHISTON red, and if I get on those at all, it'll be fine. So, not a lot of red on this model actually. But I think it's going to look nice. It's a nice bright pop to go with the blues and the reds and all that. So the blues, the reds, the whites, they'll all come together really nicely. So I'm just going to go in here, sneak into all the details, and use MEPHISTON red to give that nice bright red, deep, rich red foundation on the tabard. So I'll just go up and around. Up here, you can see how it kind of hangs low. There's always the box art as well. I find the GW websites with the 360s are awesome for kind of figuring out how they did their colors. So I'll do that, and then of course when I sneak them around, I'll do it down here as well. Now, one of the other spots that we're going to do red is going to be on the his reductor pistol here. But I'm going to do them a little bit differently. I'm going to do them like little glass vials, so I'm going to use a different paint method for that. So for this red, it'll just be the tabards. And of course, we can't forget the purity seals, so I'll just do the wax seal part of the purity seals in the MEPHISTON red as well. Okay, so with the reds done, we're moving on to our LEADBELCHER, and that's going to be basically covering anything that is functional on the Marine. So things like the little surgeon tools up top, everything down to his little different elements that are in here. So let's start with this. Okay, so functioning. So I'm going to go with these little mechanical doodaddy-doos punching out of here. These little leads. All right. And obviously you can see that I'm a little sloppy. I got some red in there as well, but that's not a big deal. We'll be coming back to that. Next up, we've got, working our way up, we've got our little kind of collapsible bits of material back here, which I like to have as metallic. So the backs of the knees, they'll get that. In here as well, the backpack will get the little exhaust vents at the bottom. We'll do those all up. In addition to that, we'll do these vents up at the top as well. also do this venting up at the top here to match our other Primaris Marines. We'll do this little reactor cover at the back, leaving the apothecary symbol as intact as we can. So we're going to come back and do that in gold. And then we'll do the side elements of our backpack here. There's actually a surprising amount of this functional stuff on this guy. Next up, we'll do the Chirurgeon tools up here as well. And we'll do these in a flat metallic all the way across. We'll do the bottom elements here as well where they bracket on. And then the little slider parts of the backpack, the little tracks that they run on. Now I'm actually going to leave these pieces in here white. So I'm just going to do a bit of an overbrush over top of this grid for the light. All right, I'll do the handles back here. All right, and I'm essentially just going to leave this frame as white, but the back, this little casing part here, I'll do in the LEADBELCHER as well. Now his extra pistol handle, that'll get done back here as well. And the other parts of his arsenal here will get done as well. We'll just do these front elements here and then the back element up at the top. Now for his toolkit here, I'm going to leave the majority of it white, but I'm going to go in and sneak metallic in to all these elements that are in the back here, the hosing and all of that. Up here. And it's nice because you're not really going to see it, so it's going to be a little tricky to paint it. But we'll get all these elements up here, all done in the LEADBELCHER, and then the wash will take that down nice, and we'll just have to pick out some of the highlights. It'll be great. So for his helmet and his face here, I'm just going to do the little bits of piping that are in here, and the side pieces of the ear pieces. And in addition to that, I'm going to do the track for his sensor and the actual sensor itself. Now it's going to mostly be kind of a glass effect on here, or a lens effect. But I figured I'd just paint it up just solid for now to get that base color on, give us that depth, and then we'll just be painting the gemmy style kind of glass on it there as well. And then finally we'll hunt down all of the cabling that's exposed, right, like that. Well, there'll be some exposed cabling here, and you'll also see that there is some of this cabling at the back that will get exposed as well. So we'll go after that as well. Alright, so I'll go after all those pieces, and I'll finish up the rest of our friend here. Okay, so I went through and finished everything up with the LEADBELCHER, and just wanted to make a quick note that I also tagged these tools that were in here and the top of the bolter here as well. So, yahoo, looking good. Now, with the model being mostly white, I mean, obviously we're getting closer and closer to what we see. So the next color is going to be our RETRIBUTOR armor, and this is going to be the base of all of our gold for the fetishes and the iconography and all of that. So let's give it a go. Now the first piece that's going to go in here is this the little skull. So anything kind of decorative, we're going to use the gold for that. In addition to that, we're going to use these little bottles here, these vials. We'll start them off with the gold as well. All right, and that will include the vial in his hand here. So just make sure that the coats go on nice and thin. And then we'll move off to the iconography on the shoulder. So the little death's head here, the skull and the wings, and of course the cross hatching here for that apothecary symbology. And we'll do the skull and wings, the death's head down here as well. We'll also go for the just these guards here above the knees. We'll do the shoulder pads here as well, just the trim on the outside of the shoulder pads. Now I'm going to go over this with another color. So the reason I'm doing the edges first is it's a lot easier to kind of fill in and stay within the lines than it is to basically just paint them on after, because you're just going to muck up whatever color you have in there. And of course we can't miss the iconography on the back of the pack here on the reactor. And then in addition to that, super fine work here. Now I'm going to start with the highest detail first, but this skull in the back, it's bonded in with these metallic kind of bands that are in here. So I'm just going to do this. Little steady hands here wherever possible. And I'm just going to fill that with the screaming skull in a minute, but there we go. And then finally, right on the head here, we've got more of that iconography, which we'll catch. Next up, we're going to do all of the leathery type products. So basically the holsters here and at the back, and we're going to do those in Abaddon black. I think there's another, oh, I saw another pouch in here. In addition to doing the leathery parts, we're also going to do the casing of the reductor bolt pistol. So, this one might take a few coats. Abaddon black, the paint itself tends to get a little bit thick at times, so I just tend to water it down pretty heavily. And that being said, I might have to do a few coats on it. So, just going in here, going now onto the holster, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't go over that nice red that we did. But it's a lot easier to work with what's kind of three-dimensionally towards you than what's deep inside there. And then finally, just the casing around the reductor bolt pistol here. I'm going to leave that center piece intact. And I'm going to work around my kind of silvery LEADBELCHER here on the top. But I'll just keep grinding through. So I'll do a second coat on all of this stuff, and I will be right back. Okay, now that we've got the black all done, it's really starting to add some depth to the model, so it's you know, contrasting things out nicely. So next up is our screaming skull, and we just got a few things on the model to do with this one. We're going to do our purity seals. He's got an arm pad, a band on the pad there for a little scroll work, and then he's also got one on the back as well, the skull. So just super simple. I'm going to go in here and grab our purity seals, kind of front and back. All right. Make sure I get rid of all that overage that I did with the gold and the red and all of that. Okay, and then next up we're going to do the band on his arm, which will be right here. So I'll just do the band and the little frillies off to the side here. And kind of scroll work, which is pretty cool. And then finally I'll do the skull at the back, and I'll just be careful of that banding that I did with the metallic. So I want to preserve as much of that as possible. So it goes on either side of the cheeks of the skull, and it also goes at the top as well. Now I don't want to fill in the detail too much. There's some engraving on that skull there that we don't want to miss. So I'm just going to top up the skull here. Make sure we're in fairly good stead on this. Okay, so I'm just going to work my way around, making sure that I've got good coverage on all of these, and making sure I've gotten in and taken care of all of that base color of red and gold and all of that. Okay, I don't know why I was going to do the straps here, these kind of leathery straps in a color other than black. I think I was thinking, you know, like a Steel Legion drab, something like that. But I've already got leather stuff on the dude in black, so I am revisiting doing this. I don't know how my brain works sometimes. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to revisit in here, make sure I got really thin down black, not too much water on the brush, and I'm just going to go in and just lightly draw these little bits of leather in. So I'm just going to do an overbrush over top. So this is the exact opposite of what I wanted to do, but if we're just careful with the hands here, we should be okay. And of course I'll do this one in here as well. So he's got a little bit of a collection of them wrapped around his wrist. So I'll just paint that in with 2 thin coats, and I'll make sure I've got nice coverage on those. But I'm just going to take my time. I don't want to mess up all that stuff. However, if I do bone up, and I totally screw this up, I can always go back in with that red or the white or whatever, just to bring it back in line. And so, I mean, you don't have to panic if you get a little bit on the red. You can just, tap it back up with red again. So I'll work my way around. I'll get that sorted out. And in addition to that, I'm also going to do the belt around the waist holding all the goodies here. So I'll work my way around, and we'll see how that looks. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the blue in the shoulder pad for the Ultramarines. Now, my standard scheme that I've done on my other videos is going to be McCraggy blue, but a friend of mine, he's got something that he wanted a little bit different. This is actually his model, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be using Thousand Suns blue in lieu of the regular McCraggy blue. Now, everything else is going to be the exact same as all the rest of my Marines. However, just in this case, I will be subbing out McCraggy blue for Thousand Suns blue. Now, if you want to follow my other scheme, of course, just use McCraggy blue. So, here goes. I'm going to take my Thousand Suns blue here, and I'm just going to fill in between the lines here on the shoulder pad. And just super simple, just nice and careful. I'm going to work my way around. And it's a really nice blue, and it's got a bit of luminosity to it that the other one doesn't have. That one's more of a deeper kind of royal blue. The Thousand Suns blue is actually pretty cool. He's got his Mechanicum all painted up that way. He's got his Primaris Marines painted up with it as well. But it provides a really nice base of color. So I'm just going to do 2 super light coats, and it should be good. Okay, so with the blue all based in there now, I've just got really kind of 2 things left to do. One small thing, which is the progenoid gland with the pink horror here. Nice healthy organs, big and pink and all that. So I'm going to take my pink horror, make sure it's nice and thin, and I'm going to paint the gland in the hand. Now, as clean and nice as this organ is, I'm going to just coat it in blood for the blood god after, and we'll just really make it look goopy and gross and freshly pulled out. It'll be a great contrast. Actually, the blue and the white is going to be very kind of world eaters. With lots of blood, and it'll really contrast on the white armor. So I know a lot of these guys tend to be pretty clean, but he just ripped this out of the Space Marine down below. So I figure we'll goop it up all bloody and gross. So that'll be awesome. So the next piece before we're done now, I'm just going to go and I'm going to finish off our Primaris Marine that he pulled the gland out of there. And the Aquilae I'm going to do in the same golds as well. I'm going to plate this all up. There's bolter shells and all that. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to pick out the base, just kind of finish it up as I would for a normal Primaris Marine. Only I'll be doing it in this case in that alternate color of Thousand Suns blue. But in fact, if you're following my other tutorial, you would do it in the McCraggy blue. Alright, so we've got the basing all finished now. We've got, the pink organ there. We've got the Primaris Marine on the ground. Now, you'll see here I've still got the cross-hatching left over. I'm actually going to be using a Grill and Earth to kind of fill that out in a bit. But I've got all my base colors done, and this is actually going to match the basing of my buddy's army. And so now it's wash time. So I'm just going to grab my gross gunky wash here. This is it's a 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil, so we get kind of the browns and the blacks, and then I cut that again another 50% with floor wax, just basic everyday cheapy floor wax. And so it works out to be 25% Nuln, 25% Agrax, and 50% floor wax. So works out pretty well. And I'm just going to go in here and start applying my my wash to my dude. Now it's going to make the white look kind of grimy, but I don't mind that at all. I'm actually going to have a pretty streaky, pretty quote realistic white going on here. So really looking forward to seeing this. It always, you know, makes just a massive pop with all the details, especially with the whites and the bones and all of that. So really looking forward to getting this all done up. So we'll let it sit for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll let that wash just kind of sink in, make sure that there's no pooling coming up at the bottom, but looking really good so far. So with that wash all settled in and dried and all of that, you can see it's brought out a ton of detail on the model, everything from the base all the way up. Now again, I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be using a Grelin Earth on the base down here, so it doesn't look very fancy right now, clearly. But you can see that it's really brought out all the detail, it's brought out all the little straps, everything like that. So our next phase is to build our colors back up again, and I'm going to do that with some really thinned down white scar. Now, I know people are saying that white is really tough to paint, and actually I disagree. I think it's actually pretty decent to paint in general. All you need to do is just, we're just going to go over top again. And now I'm going to do this in a streaky kind of format. So I'm just going to go down like this, and I'm going to do a couple thin coats. Now it sounds like a lot of work, and it kind of makes people get really shy from doing it, but in reality it's actually not that bad. So as you can see, it's pretty chalky and pretty messy, but what we'll do is I'll just keep kind of working at this, and usually it only takes about 2 coats, maybe 3, which sounds again like a lot of work, but you're not exactly painting an army of white scars here. And what I'm looking to do is just like you know, some of the other organic paint schemes, just make it be a little bit rougher, and you'll see that you get a nice gradation between the light color and the dark, and it makes the white look a little more, I guess, true, if that makes sense. I think just a big sheet of white, it looks a little too perfect. I mean, obviously these guys aren't going to be dressed in white rolling around on the battlefield, but I think it looks really sharp. Things like the hands, again, I'm just going to just do like kind of a streaky, it's almost like an organic type of paint scheme. Okay, and then the little divots out here, and you can see we leave all that dark white, if you will, that kind of gray, we'll leave that in the backdrop there. So I'm going to work my way through. Is there anything of interest in here? No, not really. I'm going to work my way through, and maybe things like the elbow pad where there's a ridge there, definitely. Maybe I'll start with like a rough edge highlight, and then just kind of blend into that up and down in kind of this streaky type of format. Okay, so I will work my way through this guy, and again, just lots of light coats. Don't go too thick, because you can always revisit, and when it's light, it dries fairly quickly. So even in the time it's taken to talk here, I could go back over this knee pad and just go over top again. So once you've gone around the whole model, I think you'll be in pretty good stead there. So all right, well, I will get to this, and like I said, just 2 thin coats. It's actually super easy to paint it, and make sure that you leave all that recessed detail right in there. Now, as I've been trucking along, I mean, it's obviously not a perfect process, and what I'll do is I'll constantly re-improve. it looks like you kind of do it all in one pass. You do the painting tutorials and all that. But in reality, you just kind of just keep reiterating over and over. Now, it takes a lot of time and effort to do the white, for sure. You know, you got to do multiple small coats. But if you're patient, and you don't have to be patient on everything, like the metallics are all essentially done, the blacks are going to be easy to do. But if you're just patient with the white, it's pretty rewarding. It looks nice. It's kind of dirty and grimy, but it still pops quite a bit, which is fantastic. But if you get into a situation like this, where I've kind of, you know, sloshed a little bit over that line there, and you want to restore that line, all I'm doing is I'm taking that wash again, that 25% Nuln, 25% Agrax, and then 50% Floor Wax. I'm just going to take that wash there and a detail brush, and you can just go back in and just kind of, make sure I don't have too much on there. You can go back in and you can just touch it up again, which is great. And you don't have to worry about it too much. You can restore a good chunk of your lines if you feel that you've kind of gone in. You can see it's in here as well. Now we're going to come in with the Micron pens, but if you want to just have that consistent line all the way through, and you know, you can go back in and you can just tidy things up just a little bit if you feel you've gone a little bit too overboard. Again, we are going with that Micron pen at the end to kind of black line, but it's a great way to just restore those individual little bits of detail for you. Anyway, I'm going to continue along with the white. I've still got lots to do, but I just wanted to share how I just kind of restore that white if the needs be. Alright, so I'm liking the way the white turned out, nice and crisp and clean, but it's still got a bit of that kind of dirtiness to it that's kind of maintained. So I think it's that little bit of dirtiness that really sells it as actually being white with shadows and things like that. Now you can't highlight it, so you can't fake your eye out as much. So that low lighting with the wash going back in, or just kind of having this rougher transition, I think really sells the white. So next up, we're going to work on the blue. Now again, just because I know people jump around in the videos, my classic scheme that you'll see with the other Primaris, they're all painted with the McCraig blue. But this alternate one, which is for a friend's model here, the alternate one I'm going to use Thousand Suns blue. But if you're doing this to fit in with the other ones that we did in the Primaris videos, just start with them. Just put in the McCraig blue instead of the Thousand Suns blue. But for this video, the alternate scheme, we're going to use the Thousand Suns blue. And so all we're going to do now is we're just going to go in and just kind of top up that shoulder pad. And of course I'll do the Primaris Marine down on the ground as well there. And just super simply, I'm just going to go in and make sure that I leave, again, that kind of low light around the corners of that gold there. So just kind of streaking it around, taking my time. Nice thin coats. Now it is a base paint, so it does cover up pretty quickly. Same with the McCraig blue as well, actually, I noticed. And I'm just going to work my way around and keep as much of that low light as I can. Alright, so I'll just overbrush the marine on the ground here while I'm in the middle of this this blue. And then we'll come back and do the reds. Alright, looks good. Now to finish off the blue, I'm just going to do an edge highlight of a Lothern blue. And it's going to be super simple. Now, of course, around the pauldrons, it's always a little bit goofy, but not too bad. So I'll just make sure I have a little bit on my brush. Lots and lots of control, fairly thin down. Not too thin down, because I want lots of control over what's going on. So all I'm going to do now is just do a little edge highlight just in the middle. Just take my time and go over. Now, if I do too much of this edge highlight, it's no big deal. I've got lots of either the McCraig or the Thousand Suns blue. And I've got wash, and I'm coming with the pen after. So just take your time and work your way around. Now, if the job isn't perfect, and it is very tough to paint these rounded pauldrons, if the job's not perfect, you just take a little bit of Thousand Suns blue, and you just kind of just go in and edge it out. It's a lot easier to take away the highlight than to do it perfectly the first time. So I'm just going to go in here and just kind of just gently creep away that Lothern blue with the Thousand Suns blue. And it ends up giving you a much finer look in the end. Alright, so I've got a whole video on this subtractive edge highlighting, and it's a really nice, easy way to paint the lines for sure. Alright, the blue is popping awesome against the white, and now we're going to continue that kind of pop with our red, and we're going to go back in and we're going to overbrush with our MEPHISTON red again. And oh man, like the color is just really vibrant on this guy. And so we'll take our MEPHISTON red. Yeah, I'm really loving this. It's got lots of vibrancy, which is good. Lots of life, lots of kind of animation to them. We saw that in the review, but just in general, just awesome. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm just going to go over kind of the major highlights. So, you know, kind of the larger pieces of cloth that are sticking out. And I'm going to leave all that recessed shading in there. I'm going to be a little tricky in and around here, but we're good. I'll make sure that across the chest here I get that nice kind of expanding tabard here. Alright. Try and sneak in there a little bit between the black. And then, of course, on the back as well. A little tricky to get in there, but not bad. We'll just stick to the major highlights. And then I'll grab a bit more paint and I will go in and do our purity seals here. So just on the chest, I'm just going to go around and just do the outside highlight, making sure I touch up any of the parts where the gold has gone in and touched the red seals, or it's kind of settled when the wash dried. But just try and restore that color back to that red there. Beautiful. And then I'll take a bit of thinned down Wild Rider red, and I'll just go over the very edges or the highest places on that tabard there. And I want to keep as much of that life and color in there as possible, and I just want to pop the edges with a nice bright red. And then I'll do the purity seals here as well. Just a very nice light edge highlight all the way around, but we get that pop of color. And it really ties them into the rest of the Primaris characters with the red on the lieutenants and the captain with his big cape. Wonderful. Alright, we're looking nice and sharp. Next up, we're going to start working on the smaller details before we highlight the metallics. And those two details are going to be the progenoid gland we're going to do in Pink Horror. And then we're going to do the skull on the back and the little kind of name pad on the side of the pauldron and the purity seals as well. So just a little bit of Pink Horror here. And I'm just going to do a very gentle overbrush of the higher end details of the progenoid gland here. Now, normally we'd kind of play around a little bit with this gland to see what it looks like, but in truth, we're just going to cover this thing in gory blood anyway. So we just want that pink to kind of just highlight and pop, just like this. Beautiful. Okay, and then next up, while that dries, we'll use our Screaming Skull. And the Screaming Skull is going to be for our purity seals, the skull at the back, and just a little bit of detailing in. So I'm just going to do an overbrush over here, leaving a bunch of that low light if we can. There we go. And I'll just do an edge on this one here. So we'll try and work our way through, but I want to leave as much of that low lighting that shading as I can. Beautiful. Now we'll come in with the pen after and we'll do the text for that. Let's see what else we got. We've got the nameplate on the side. This guy right here. And we're going to do the same thing. We'll just make sure that we just do kind of the outline of it here, leaving as much of that low light in there too. All right, and then finally our skull at the back. We're just going to go in and just pick out some teeth, do the general shape of the skull. Now I did the gold kind of banding to hold in the skull, or hold the skull to the Marine. So I'm just going to make sure that I leave that space available. So all that overbrushing is just going to be on the skull. Now I'm going to just be very careful here. Get as much paint off, and it's a bit like a dry brush, but I'll make sure that that skull, that engraving, that 5 on the skull there is good. All right. Yeah, really coming together now. All the colors are really blending super well. So the skull, the purity seals, and the banner in bone, and the progenoid gland in pink horror. So the last detail that we're going to work on before the metallics, for the armor portion of this anyways, is going to be the ESHIN gray on the black, and it's just going to be a straight up edge highlight over all of the black on the model. Now it's a nice subtle deep gray, so it actually highlights really well, and it's a very subtle kind of effect. So I'm just going to work my way around the edges here in like an overbrush style fashion, and that should bring out all of the edging there. Now if I do a little bit too much again, of course I can always go back in and you know, put a little bit of Abaddon black back in there to kind of re-low light, if you will, the fabric, the cloth, the whichever. So I'm just going to go around now and just do a highlight over top, and because I am coming in with the pen after, I'm just going to loosely go around the pattern in the holster there. So I'll do the same for that holster. I'll do the same for the reductor there as well, and I'll do the same as well for the strap here that he has kind of around his wrist. So just an edge highlight of the ESHIN gray around that, just to give a little bit of pop to the black. And there's another one up here, the little claw weldery piece, and we'll bring that in as well. So the last major step here for just the armor is going to be our metallics. So anything that's done in LEADBELCHER, we're going to highlight with RUNEFANG steel, and yeah, I'm really liking the look of it actually. It's looking really solid. Now there's a few pieces here that I'm going to prep for some extra work that we'll be doing, but let's start with the basics. So anytime you see an edge of the LEADBELCHER, I'm just going to go in and just edge it with, sorry, anytime you see a surface with LEADBELCHER, I'm just going to go in and edge it with the RUNEFANG steel. Again, just give it that little bit of character and depth, which is great. I'm also going to go in here for the arms and just kind of do a very gentle overbrush. So anything that is not low lighted with the wash, I'll do that. The handles, the wiring, you know, the back here with the lantern. We've got this little bit of a sensor here. I'll just do the edges because I'm going to do the gem inside of that. We've got our equipment in here, which will get a little bit of a pop of silver. And we've got our tools in here as well, which definitely need to be popped out a little bit as well. Looking good. For the reductor pistol, I'm going to be doing all the pieces that I'd previously done in LEADBELCHER, especially these guys right in here. So the vials, we're going to be using a gem paint to paint the vials. So I want it to be as bright as humanly possible. So I'll use more of that RUNEFANG steel in there. I'll use it on the interior here as well. Make sure I got the stuff off the brush. Okay, I'll just touch up the edges on the outside here. And generally just working my way around, making sure that I've got all my bases covered here. Now, if you're feeling super adventurous after doing the pack here, you might want to go in and do some of these details. And you want to make sure there's not very much paint on your brush, and you can just give it kind of a downwards motion just to give it a little bit of highlight, but you don't want to fill it in. And even if you did, again, you got more wash, you've got you know, pens, you've got all kinds of solutions for that. But if you want to add a little bit extra pop, feel free to go for it. All right, sweet. So I will work my way around, making sure that I've got all these major the major highlights here, done with the RUNEFANG steel. After the silver's all done, we'll lay into the gold here, and we'll do it with fulgurite copper. It's got a nice kind of bright-ish, little bit of silver embedded in it kind of look to it. So I'm just going to do an edge highlight and an overbrush. So any of the detail here I'll just do with an overbrush or an edge highlight if you've got a nice hard edge here. The vials, I'll pick out the kind of top and bottom details. And all it does is just warms it up and gives just a little tiny bit of pop to your different elements here. So again, I'll just do a quick overbrush, being careful of the recesses here. And it really just adds a lot of warmth and a lot of pop to that gold. So whether it's the vials or the shoulder pads or cabling or anything like that, I'm just going to use that fulgurite copper just to brighten it up a shade. Alright, so that brings us to a close for our first video. Most of the basing of the armor has been done. The only thing that we're missing now is kind of a black line to tidy it all up, but I'm going to wait till the end of the second video just to kind of put that together. So, this guy is essentially done. He's kind of tabletop ready, but in order to add the details, in the next video, the second part, we're going to do the data pad, we're going to do the optics, the lenses on the scanner, we're going to do the purity seals, we'll write in on those. We'll do his name on the pauldron here on the side as well, which is kind of in this little banner here. And then we're going to spend a bit of time working on the vials of all the different fluids kind of in the reductor pistol, which will be kind of cool. And of course, we'll throw a bunch of blood for the blood god. We'll kind of spackle that, splash that all around. And just a few other little things as well. We'll do the lenses here for the, again, the optics. We'll do the light. We'll do it in kind of a pale, kind of gross sodium yellow. And yeah, really looking forward to getting them all done. But until then, just want to say thanks a lot for watching this one. This was, of course, was our part 1. Part 2 will follow shortly, and hope it was of value to you guys. I was really a lot of fun putting this one together. The character, spending that extra little bit of time, is really coming together quite nicely. So really happy with the results so far. And if you want more videos like this, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Of course, there's a little bell right beside that as well, and that'll allow you to get notifications of all of our future videos. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.